The air in the law office was suffocating. Taehyung's palms were clenched in his lap, nails digging into his skin, but he didn't let it show. Across from him sat the woman who had caused months of silent pain in their home. Sujin, Jiho's biological mother. "I want him back," she said, her voice as sharp as ice. "He's my son. You had no right to raise him behind my back." Jungkook's hands trembled beside him. "You left," he said, barely able to breathe. "You abandoned him." "I was struggling. I needed time." "And now what?" Taehyung said quietly, gaze hard. "You show up years later, and suddenly you remember your mother." Sujin's eyes burned. "He's mine." "No," Taehyung said, his voice shaking. "He's ours. Mine and Jungkook's. Because we were there every time he cried, every time he felt sick, every night he called for someone, and you weren't." Her lips curled. "You think that makes you his parent?" Jungkook's voice cracked. "You weren't there when he had nightmares and begged for someone to stay." "He calls Taehyung Papa," Jungkook continued. "Do you know how long it took for him to say that without crying afterwards?" Sujin stood. "You can't stop me. I'll go to court. I'll take him back." Taehyung stood too, slow, deliberate. "Do that. But understand this, I'm not going to let you break him again." She stared at him, stunned. For a moment, her confidence wavered. "I don't care if I'm not blood," Taehyung whispered. "I'll fight like hell, because Jiho is my son." Jungkook looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time. And maybe he was. Later that night, "Why did you say all that?" Jungkook asked, voice low. "Why would you risk everything for Jiho?" Taehyung turned to him, eyes glassy. "Because I've already lost people I love," he said. "I won't lose this family, too." Silence. Heavy. Real. Jungkook reached out. And this time, Taehyung didn't pull away. Jiho stood outside the hallway, the soft hum of adult voices leaking through the door. He clutched his stuffed bunny tighter, heart pounding. "She's going to take me," he whispered to himself, lip trembling. He didn't understand all the words, but he knew the fear. And it sat like a stone in his tiny chest. Later that night, Jungkook found him hiding behind the couch, silent, tear tracks on his cheeks. "Jiho?" he asked softly, kneeling down. "What's wrong?" Jiho didn't answer. Just climbed into Jungkook's lap and held on like he'd float away. "She said she's my real mom," Jiho whispered. "Does that mean I have to go with her?" Jungkook's breath caught. Taehyung stepped into the room behind them, hearing every word, heartbreaking. "No, baby," Jungkook said firmly, pressing a kiss to Jiho's head. "You're not going anywhere. Not without us." "But," she said, Jiho's voice cracked. Taehyung walked over and crouched down beside them. "Listen to me, Jiho. You don't ever have to leave the people who love you. Family doesn't mean just who you're born from. It means who stays, who holds your hand, who tucks you in, who loves you even when you're messy and loud and scared." Jiho looked at him, eyes searching. "But what if she takes me?" "She won't," Jungkook said, voice firmer now. "We're going to protect you. Always. I promise. And I'll fight for you," Taehyung added gently, placing his hand over Jiho's tiny one. "Like a superhero, remember?" Jiho nodded slowly. "You are my superhero," Taehyung smiled through wet eyes. "And you're mine." That night, after Jiho finally drifted off in their bed, nestled between both men, Taehyung stayed away. "I meant every word," he whispered into the quiet. Jungkook looked at him. "So did I." Their hands brushed. And in that stillness, It was clear, no court, no fear, no past could break what they were building. Not anymore. The courtroom was colder than Jungkook expected. Not in temperature, but in energy. Sujin sat at the front with her lawyer, her gaze flicking between the judge and the little boy nestled beside Jungkook and Taehyung. Jiho's hand clung tightly to Jungkook's sleeve. He was scared. But not alone. Taehyung leaned down, whispering in Jiho's ear, "Remember, we are right here, okay? Nothing's going to happen to you." Jiho nodded, small but brave. The judge glanced at the papers, then looked at Sujin. "You've only recently come forward. What made you decide now that you wanted custody of your son?" Sujin's voice was clear, rehearsed. "I've changed. I've rebuilt myself. I have a right to be in his life." Jungkook stood, his jaw tight. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he began. She left him. She signed her rights away when she walked out on a newborn. The courtroom quieted. He doesn't know her. He doesn't remember her. She was gone for 4 years, and she didn't even call. The judge turned to Taehyung. "And you?" Taehyung stood beside Jungkook, voice calm but firm. "I didn't give him life, Your Honor. But I give him every morning, every bedtime, every scraped knee. He calls me Papatai. Not because we told him to, but because he feels safe." Sujin scoffed from her seat. "He's not your real child." Jiho's small voice cut through the room. "He's my real papa." Everyone turned. Jiho stood, voice trembling but fierce. "He makes me pancakes. He kisses my head. He tells me I'm strong." "You never did." Sujin's face paled. The judge tapped her gavel once, then looked down at the documents again. "We'll take a short recess. But I've heard enough to understand where this child feels most loved." Jungkook sank onto the bench, exhausted. Taehyung sat beside him, Jiho curled up between them, resting his head on Taehyung's lap. "You were amazing," Taehyung said quietly. "I was terrified," Jungkook admitted, rubbing his face. Taehyung turned toward him. "But you stood up. For him. For us." There was a beat of silence. And then Jungkook finally said it. "I think I'm falling for you." Taehyung looked at him, breath catching. "You think?" he asked with a small smile. Jungkook chuckled softly. "Okay. I know." Taehyung's fingers laced with his. For once, there was no distance between them. No fear. Just love, building louder than anything else. The judge returned to the courtroom after the recess, files in hand, expression unreadable. Jungkook gripped Taehyung's hand tightly. Jiho sat on his lap now, clutching his shirt with trembling fingers. Sujin had returned too, her confidence slightly cracked. The judge looked up. "I've reviewed the testimonies, documents, and circumstances surrounding this case. While biological ties are a consideration, the child's emotional stability and well-being must always come first." Sujin straightened. Jungkook stopped breathing. Taehyung didn't blink. The judge continued. "It is clear from today's proceedings that the child has developed a strong, nurturing bond with his father and his partner. Removing him from that environment could be emotionally damaging." Sojin's lawyer whispered something to her, but she shook her head slightly, lips pressed in a firm line. "In light of this," the judge said, eyes landing softly on Jiho, "I am ruling in favor of Jungkook Jian to be retained full custody. Ms. Sojin may be granted supervised visitation rights upon further evaluation, should she choose to pursue a gradual reintegration." Jungkook blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. Taehyung's fingers tightened around his. We won, Taehyung whispered. Jeho turned to Jungkook. We are staying, Jungkook nodded, finally smiling as tears filled his eyes. We are staying, baby. We are staying. The courtroom began to clear. Stood still for a moment, her eyes flickering between the trio, a soft flicker of regret crossing her features, then turned and walked away. But Jungkook didn't watch her leave. He turned to Taehyung instead, heart in his eyes. You didn't just fight beside me, Jungkook whispered. You gave me something to fight for. Taehyung smiled and pressed a hand over Jungkook's cheek. And you gave me a family. Jeho looked between them, innocently clueless of the weight of those words. Does this mean we get pancakes tonight, he asked. Jungkook laughed through tears. Anything you want, Jeho, even double syrup. Taehyung scooped him into his arms with a grin. Make it triple. As they walked out of the courtroom, not broken, not defeated, Jungkook wrapped an arm around Taehyung's waist. They weren't just walking out as two people and a child. They were walking out as a family. And it was just the beginning. A few weeks had passed since the court ruled in Jungkook's favor. Soojin hadn't contacted them again. Life had returned to a peaceful rhythm, but something had changed. Everything felt more precious now. More intentional. That night, the apartment was warm with the scent of pancakes, Jeho's laughter echoing from the living room as he built a pillow fort. Jungkook and Taehyung stood in the kitchen, quietly doing dishes side by side. Hey, Jungkook said softly, drying his hands. Come here. Taehyung turned, curious. Jungkook pulled him close, wrapping his arms around his waist, resting his forehead on Taehyung's shoulder. You didn't just help me win a case. You helped me believe I deserve love again. Taehyung pulled back slightly to meet his eyes, his voice quiet but firm. You always did. I just reminded you. Jungkook hesitated, then reached into his pocket. His hands were slightly shaky. Taehyung blinked as Jungkook revealed a small, velvet box. Tae, I know we've gone through a storm. And maybe it's not the perfect time or the perfect way, but I don't want to waste another second. He opened it. A simple ring glinted inside. Marry me, Taehyung's breath hitched. Not just for Jeho. Not for a legal paper. But for us. Because I love you. Because I want to come home to you for the rest of my life. Taehyung didn't even need a second to think. He leaned in and kissed him deeply, with every answer, every yes, already in that kiss. Jeho peeked from behind the fort and squealed when he saw them hugging. Did Appa finally ask? He shouted. Jungkook turned red. Wait, you knew? Taehyung laughed. He caught me finding the box last week. Jeho giggled and ran to them. So now you're both my real parents. Taehyung picked him up. We always were, sweetheart. Later that night, they sat in the fort together, candles glowing, soft music playing, pancakes stacked high. Jungkook leaned into Taehyung's side. Jeho rested in his lap, eyes fluttering closed. You're not just someone I love, Jungkook whispered, pressing his lips to Taehyung's temple. You're my safest place. Taehyung looked around their small living room, at Jeho's toys, the cluttered drawings on the fridge, the picture of the three of them at the park, and whispered back, home. And that was exactly what they had become. A home. A family. Forever.